I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we'd like to talk to you about pathways to harmony. I think all of us want harmony and joy and peace in our lives, but harmony is one of those things that I think elude many people. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is. And harmony eludes people because sometimes we don't realize what it really means. It just means to be at peace with oneself, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And harmony, like all things, and of course we spend a lot of time at the church center and in our counseling work and talking with people about the importance of what happens inside each one of us. And we have to start by being harmonious within our own being before we can worry about the harmony in our family, in our circle of friends, and even in the world.
That's true. And so many truth seekers and teachers are saying today that it all depends on me, and really it does. Each person it depends on, because as we teach so closely that we're all one, and we're all connected with Creator God. And therefore, if we're all connected with Creator God, we're all connected to each other. And that is very true. And so as we create harmony within ourselves, it's like the song we sing every Sunday in church, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." Well, when it begins with us, then it flows out to others. And if our goal, each of us, is to be harmonious, then that harmony goes throughout the world. And when someone is over greedy, over ambitious, a tyrant, and so forth, then that energy goes out too, and it locks into the people who are of like mind. So it's really quite simple.
It is, and you touched on something that I think is really very important, and we spend some time on the program talking about, but this issue of energy and having harmonious energies about ourselves, and harmonious energies and vibration. In New Thought and in metaphysics, we talk a lot about vibration, but the issue of energy is something that I think is much more universally understood. And we all expend so much energy, we all need energy and want energy, but if we have harmonious energies and if we expend our energies in a harmonious way, then very positive things begin to happen within our physical bodies and within our mental bodies and within every aspect of our life.
Yes, and that reflects on children so much more than most of us realize. And you can tell if you're working with a child and with them from time to time, when they've had a good day and when they've had a bad day, or when they've had a part of that day has been something unusual and unpleasant has occurred, because they act it out. And then if they haven't acted it out, they become hyper, because of the people around them. Either the adults have been unpleasant or the children have been hard for that specific child to get along with. And so that is in itself quite remarkable, that children reflect, but then their surroundings and the energy with which they are surrounded. But of course we all do, and sometimes we don't realize that's why we get upset, or life doesn't seem worth living, or it's very difficult for us, because we don't realize how much our environment affects us.
Our environment is tremendously important and sets the stage for how we feel, and also creates the outpicturing of what's happening inside us. and of course, when we can see how people surround themselves and how people order their lives and order their priorities, and how they use their time, we begin to have an insight as to the harmonious or the lack of harmony that exists within each individual life. And just when we began the program, and we were talking briefly about the concept and idea of harmony, and today, of course, we're talking about pathways to harmony. And life is a pathway. It's not a destination at which we arrive. And I think so often people will come to us and say, well, how can we get I know you and I sometimes, people view us and say, well, you or Iris have these perfect lives. Well, our lives are in turmoil like everyone else's, but our lives are really a process through which we go. We never really arrive. It is a pathway of constantly working with the energies, with the body, with the flow, with infinite intelligence, with all of the things that make us what we are. And so we don't arrive at harmony. We strive for it, but we take our pathway in a harmonious way. And I was just thinking, again, going back to the beginning of the program, when we look at a concert or we look at musicians, and probably people can identify harmony more easily and the definition of harmony more easily with music than anything else. And it's very easy when we know when something is in harmony, when we're listening to a concert or to a band or to a vocalist. And our lives are like that. Sometimes our lives are not, sometimes, always. And so it's very interesting that if we look at our own lives and look at the lives of those around us and the environment in which we find ourselves, sometimes we are in inharmonious times of discord. And of course, in a concert hall, it's very easy to immediately cringe when there's discord. And yet, a symphony is played with such ease, and when it's played with such ease, and you began talking in the beginning of the program about how each of us has a part to play, and in the orchestra of life, in the orchestra on the stage, each musician has a part to play, and that harmony of each musician playing in concert makes a wonderful, beautiful vibration and also a wonderful feeling. But then if someone hits a wrong note, then it changes. It changes our way of feeling, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And there's 2 points that we might go further there. That it's an intent on our part on the part of every individual. If our intent is to have a harmonious life, then we will do all that we can to have that. And sometimes it has to be studied, it has to be planned, and then we have to just have the intention of doing that. And I know a lot of people make promises at Christmas to the Christ, or at certain holidays, whatever our religion, we make promises for ourselves that will help humanity. And so I know someone who used the serenity as the keynote for about 3 different years, not consecutive years, but 3 different years. And then her friends noticed afterward that, oh, there's a change in that lady. And so she said, well, so she was really delighted that they noticed, because she hadn't seen those friends for some time and they thought she seemed different. And that's proof that if your intent is to be more harmonious or serene, then one can be, but we have to be honest with ourselves, and we can't cheat, and we can't say, well, I'm going to be harmonious, and that's not enough. We have to be it. And so as we are being that, we're not judgmental, so it makes us more pleasant to be with. We're not bossy and telling people what to do. And so we're minding our own business, and we're just getting on with our own lives and being lenient with other people, the way they lead their lives. And so again, our intent makes all the difference in the world. And as we lead a harmonious life, then we are happier. And we're here on earth for specific reasons, to grow back to God more fully. So then we're really fulfilling that endeavor, aren't we?
Absolutely. And harmony and serenity are synonymous, aren't they?
Yes.
And so to be serene and to be in harmony with life also means sometimes to detach
Yes.
from the concerns that we have for other people's behavior. And that's not to be callous and say we don't care about other people, because of course we do. And we certainly care about the people that we love and that are in our circle of friends and our neighbors and our community, our coworkers, and that's totally appropriate. But that doesn't excuse the fact that, as you said so well, we can't judge their behavior. And we're not the arbiters of the universe, thank heavens.
Thank heaven.
But when we begin to believe that we are the arbiters of the universe, and we begin to not honor in others their pathway, then we become judgmental, then we become bitter, then we become inhospitable, we become uncharitable, we become inharmonious, and in a lot of cases we become sick of mind, body, and soul. And sometimes, especially I'm thinking of in a family way, with young children, of course, it's different than dealing with adolescents or adults. But with young children, we want to guide them, but we also need to be guided by them. But with adults, we need to release them and allow them to experience that pathway and that experience that they have chosen. And we may give them counsel and we may give them nudgings, but we really need to honor the fact that everyone isn't going to behave the way that we think they should. And that's not what harmony is about. Harmony is about each of us understanding that we have our part to play. And once we play our part, then it's up to all of those around us to play their part. And if they play in a discordant way, then sometimes the solution is to simply remove ourselves, or to simply not allow that negative, inharmonious vibration of their presence to permeate our vibration or our harmony and disturb our peace. And it's kind of an old term is vexed. You know, some people vex us, and I think a lot of people get vexed and get bothered and get angry about the behavior of others. And I think we're never going to reach a point in time where everyone behaves the way we think they ought to. And that's all right. It's all right that they don't behave the way we think they ought to. And we need to release them and allow them to experience their life and honor them in that and let them go on their way. And sometimes it means even allowing them to harm themselves. Not physically, but I'm speaking emotionally.
Yes.
And there is a limitation to the amount of influence that we can have on others and should have on others.
Yes, and in counseling, very often we, and I'm sure you do too, have people say, well, I don't understand how so-and-so can do that. People are in counseling almost always because of interpersonal relationships, and they just can't understand why so-and-so does what they do. Well, I'm sure you probably tell them about the same thing I do, that, well, you may never understand that, but you don't have to. You just have to accept that that's what they're doing, and you can like it or not like it and react accordingly. That's fair. But it's not fair to judge anyone else, because we don't know what someone's life purpose is for each lifetime. And as we go through life after life after life, through the process of reincarnation, then we have different things that we need to fulfill, which other people can begin to understand because they came in to fulfill another mission or another goal. And so that's one good reason for not trying to understand what people are doing. And if it affects us, then we have to understand how we can cope with it, but not to necessarily understand the other person, because I don't think we can all understand every person anytime, except to say, well, they have a right to their own decisions, and life's a series of choices. But we never can know exactly why people do exactly what they do.
Right, and we need not know why they do what they do. We'd like to pause at this point in the program so that we can share some information with you.
We would like to offer you the opportunity to receive one of these free booklets to further your understanding of the New Thought message of confident living. Each month we will feature a different booklet, which will be mailed to you free and postage paid. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807.
In the last half of the program, I think it's important for us to talk, since we are talking about pathways to harmony, about ways in which we can find harmony for ourselves. And of course, one of the ways that we touched upon in the beginning of the program, we touched upon many, but is to not be concerned about others' pathways as much as we are concerned about ours, and not to be too analytical about life and circumstances and situations. I find in counseling and talking with people that a lot of inharmony comes about when people try to understand things that don't serve much purpose. Now, there are times in our lives when we reach out in a very needy way. And I think that is a part of the human and spiritual condition. When we become ill, when we lose a loved one, when we're faced with our own mortality, when we're faced with our own death, when we're faced with perplexity and problems, people will often ask, well, why is this happening? And one of the things that I've found, and you've heard me lecture for many years and talk to groups, is that when we ask why, we usually don't want an answer, really. We really want an argument. And so it isn't why anything happens in life. It is, now that this has happened, what do I do? And not what do I do to this other person, but what do I do in how I process it and how I feel about it and how I view the person and the circumstance. And that's very, very important, isn't it?
Yes, and they're wondering how do they get over the hurt. If they don't say it, that's really what they're trying to do, is overcome that. And the best way we can do that is, we've mentioned being non-judgmental, but to be non-judgmental and to not care about the outcome. And that might seem strange to people, that you don't care about the outcome and it's very important to you. Well, it depends on the other person. So we can't fight. If we can't make a difference, we can make much greater difference by being calm and peaceful and just letting it go than to be. It's just like I had a conversation with someone recently that I didn't wish to continue, and I just said, I don't want to continue this conversation. These things are not open for discussion. And so I don't think the person was really as offended as surprised. And so I think we have a right to say and do what we wish to, but we don't have a right to push other people too hard, but to just defend ourselves. I don't mean defend ourselves, but to step back, just step back.
And more to assert ourselves,
Yeah.
I think. And once we've asserted ourselves, then to go on with the process, as opposed to engaging the person. And so often we feel this need to engage and to validate our position or argue. And we leave that to lawyers and apologists and theologians, and we're none of those. And but I think it is important for us to be willing to say that to people and to detach from, and to say, as you said, this is not open to discussion, and I'm not going down that road. And because had you gone down that road with that person, you would have become very inharmonious, not only within yourself, but within the exchange, and in all probability would have ended, the relationship would have ended in a far different way. And I happen to, I don't know, but I think this is a conversation that you and I were sharing a while ago, where you made your position clear, and then after some reflection, the individual was able to process it and came back and said it really didn't have to do with the issue that we were talking about at all.
That's right. And she said that, and she very deeply apologized. And that's a lovely thing, because we should all be able to apologize. We should all be able to say, I'm sorry, either at that moment, or if the other person won't listen, then say it at a later time. And because I think of all people are sorry. People don't want inharmonious living, but we don't know how to avoid that process. So one way we can avoid it is to not care about the outcome, and just to say to ourselves, well, that's that person's point of view, and they have a right to their point of view. If they're not going to listen to what I have to say, then I'm not going to say it. And so, but we can judge ourselves in that way, and that's fair. But it's not fair to judge another person, which, as you just pointed out with that specific incident, it didn't have to do with me at all.
Mm-hmm.
It had to do with outside influences. It had nothing to do with me. And she said I was projecting,
Mm-hmm.
and that she was projecting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very lovely thing when one has the grace to say, I'm sorry. And we should all remember to do that, but we shouldn't get into that big situation. Anyway, a friend of mine a few years ago said to me, would you teach me how to tell people off and then they'll still like me and be my friend? And I said, I don't know what you mean. And she said, well, I've heard you say outrageous things to people and they still want to be your friend.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, well, I have to think about that. And so we have to, it's just to not push other people hard and to not get into that spot in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And if we do, to state our position and express our feelings and then move on
And
to
stay
release
calm.
it and release it and let it go. And that's so important because as we relive it and as we rehash it and as we go deeper into it, the wounds just become deeper and deeper. and of course that creates war and strife and inharmony and all of the rest of the negative experiences in life. And so what we really want so much for ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with wanting certain things for ourselves and allowing others to experience and endure that which they need to endure. It akin to that is a discussion that I've had a number of times where people have said, how can I tell someone something without hurting them? And the answer to that often is, well, you can't. So if you're going to say it, it's going to hurt, then say it and be done with it and then move on. But we try to avoid the experience, and we try to avoid really the process within ourselves. And of course, it comes back again and again to the fact that our centering, our presence needs to be in perfect harmony and balance. And that means that we live our lives with integrity and honesty and with graciousness, and we do the best that we can, and we expect always that others are going to do the same. But if they don't, that has nothing to do with us. And then we simply move through the process of life. And that's so important. And if we teach our children that, and if we then live that example, then we go on with life, and circumstances and situations come and go, and relationships come and go. And some of the relationships that we have will last a lifetime or beyond, and others will have to come to an end. And sometimes it is a simple fact that our inharmony or our most difficult times come from trying to perpetuate inharmonious relationships that are simply never going to be reconciled. And it's not that they would never be reconciled, it's that there's only so much time. And so I think, and that's not failure, that's just part of the process on the pathway. And I'm not at all suggesting that every time something goes wrong that we should go away. And I'm not suggesting in every marriage that when there's a problem we should, go find a divorce attorney, although there are times when it's time to do that. And the same with children as they marry and go out into the world, to release them and let them go. And it doesn't mean that we have to sever the relationship necessarily, but it does mean that we have to release them and release the situation. And it comes back to that non-judgmental issue. And one of the spiritual principles that I think is there that's so profound and so magnificent for us, especially in the West, and those of us in the Judeo-Christian tradition, is the example of the Christ Jesus, who went through this process of life with such serenity and such harmony, no matter what happened. And in the end of his life, it was the fact that the people that he had chosen to be his closest and his most beloved turned against him and denied him, and he was falsely accused and all of the other things. And he just serenely moved through the process. And his inharmony and his serenity was not going to be shaken. And I'm sure within his inner being, and we know from Gethsemane and the stories like it, that there were times when there were questionings because that human nature comes out. But we're spiritual beings. We're not we're not really physical beings. And when people say so often, well, I can only do this because, as we say so often, I'm only human. We're more than human. We're more than human. And because we are more than human, we can claim more than human reality in our lives. And if we do that, we're able then to grasp hold of that harmony and that serenity. And it doesn't mean that we have to be Christian to do it. And I think is a big problem too. For us, it works, but for others, it may be any faith tradition. So,
sure, and I think all great spiritual leaders throughout the world for all time have always used that same idea of peacefulness and of not pushing other people. If they don't want a hand up, then they let them be. And that's what we need to take note of that and follow it. And those people who are peaceful and have harmonious lives are the ones who are able to do that. And sometimes we can say that we do it or that we want to do it, but we have to really live it. And by living it, we are not well, we've already said what we're not doing. We're not being judgmental and so forth. But we are living life in a positive way, looking at the bright side of everything. And I don't mean living a Pollyanna life, but just knowing that everything that happens for a reason. And someone is learning a lesson there. And if we've already learned those lessons to a point, then we don't have to be put in the position of learning those lessons. We can step aside, step back, and let other people live through their process and learn their lessons. It's just like when we're training children, as when we're responsible for the lives of a child. Then if we tell that child everything to do, and no, you can do this, this, and this, and no, you can't do that, that, and that, then that child isn't going to learn very much. But they have to experience certain things. That doesn't mean we ignore our children, but then we talk with them, and no child is too young to understand. I've seen that happen so much, and I'm sure that you have too.
And that has to do with our theme today, which is really the pathway. And it is a pathway, and the pathway of life takes us on many turns, but the key is to stay on the right path of right thinking.
Yes, and to allow other people to stay on their own path and let them learn whatever it is they need to learn. And usually people will see the fallacy of their thinking, like you were relating a moment ago about my friend. It's a very lovely thing when we learn a lesson and then say, yes, I've learned this or this or this. Because, and that's what life is all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. And when we learn those lessons, we don't have to repeat them. and we don't have to take the exam again and again. But for so many of us, we'll take the exam again and again until we go down that pathway of harmony and learn to live a harmonious, happy, positive, and serene life. And we hope that you found the information that we've shared with you useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.